Good day, everybody. My name is Christopher Horn. I'm a language consultant for the British Council. Today, I will be the host for this theme of the second day of the New Directions Conference, entitled Impact and Consequences of Technology. The first presentation is titled, Is Online Testing the Future of Signed Language Assessment? It's going to be delivered by two academics from Switzerland, Tobias Haug and Wolfgang Mann. Tobias Haug studied sign linguistics at Hamburg University and deaf education at Boston University, where he received his master's in 1998. In 2009, he earned his PhD at Hamburg University. In 2017, he received his MA in language testing from Lancaster University. Since 2004, he's been the program director of the Sign Language Interpreter program in Zurich, Switzerland. One of his research interests is sign language assessment and sign language interpreting. Wolfgang Mann is a reader in special and inclusive education at the University of Roehampton, specializing in sign language development and assessment. He received his PhD in special education from the University of California, Berkeley. Wolfgang is now an associate at the Deafness, Cognition and Language Research Center at the University College London. Before we proceed, let me please remind you to please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off. If you have any questions or comments, please write them in the chat box. After the presentation, which will last approximately 20 minutes, I will read all your questions to the presenters for a 10-minute Q&A session. I should also like to remind you that this session is being recorded. With that being said, please, gentlemen, you may start your presentation now.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our presentation. Let me just share my screen. And where I go, here's this. Yeah. So again, welcome to our presentation, Online Testing, the Future of Sign Language Assessment. I'm Wolfgang Mann. I'm talking to you from London, and Tobias Haug is joining from Switzerland. This is how we envision the next 20 minutes to go. So Tobias will start us off with talking about the perspectives of signed language test developers. He will do so by referring to two survey studies that we did with international colleagues working in the field of sign language assessment. And then the focus of the next two items will be split between online sign language assessment for adults and online sign language assessment for children. The latter topic, I will focus predominantly on vocabulary. And then topic 4, we will reflect on the current state of online sign language assessment and consider opportunities as well as challenges, perhaps, as we move forward. I will hand it over to Tobias now. And Tobias, I think you have to unmute.
Yeah, welcome. Yes, I will be briefly talking about some preliminary results from a survey we did in 2018 among sign language test developers. Just be aware about that. Sign language test research in general terms is a very young subdiscipline within sign language linguistics, and especially looking at testing and talking about online testing is a very even younger field of inquiry and application. We did a first survey in 2012 and kind of like used the same variables for a second survey with 32 participants international. You might smile and think, well, that's not a really huge sample. It isn't. For our field, is actually quite good because the community, as you might know, is quite small. We'll briefly talking about benefits and shortcomings. And one of the benefits that have been mentioned is online testing is very easy to administer. It's very user friendly. And actually, as of today, I think only in the around 2005, it started that computer or online testing has been started to be developed and used mostly within research projects. And the few tests that are web-based today are mostly based in Europe or in the US. And only actually very few tests are commercially available today. And one of those tests, web-based portals that are available are located at University College London, actually. So going back to shortcomings on the left-hand side of my presentation, one of the shortcomings that have been mentioned is the cost of development. Well, that's always when you have a project where you want to develop some kind of system or online platform, it costs money. It's very hard to use for productive assessment because you need to video record it. That's the difference between sign language and spoken language, the modality, meaning you always need to have videos, you need to work with good lighting conditions, stuff like that. And actually still, it was the same topic in 2012 in the first survey, that we had problems with internet connectivity. Still today is an issue. And what you see on the right hand side, we were also asking about the use of sign language technologies. That basically means either automatic sign language recognition or sign language synthesis through avatars. There was only one study participant reporting that they used avatar technology and automatic sign language recognition. Sign language recognition is still it needs a lot of computing power. So that means that this technology advances, as we all know, and the technology is around the corner to really use it in a high quality, but therefore it's still not available to everyone. So this is a topic of definitely something for the future, to use automatic sign language recognition within sign language testing. I will now talk about the experience we made during the lockdown of our spring semester here in Zurich. Just to give you as a context, we are having here a 3 years full-time bachelor's program training sign language interpreters who work within the German-speaking part of Switzerland. Normally, people have to take the final exam in Swiss German Sign Language in the 4th semester. It consists of the productive and the receptive part. And normally the testing condition is it's an exam that takes place at the university. This year it was not possible. So there was the question of how do we deal with it? We have a very small cohort. There were only 12 students. Still, you need to think about that tests are within the study regulations. So it was basically born out of kind of like pragmatic reasons. How to do, I want to focus on the receptors part only. What we did is we used Lime Survey. You might know it's an open source survey tool. It's not for testing. It's not intended for testing, but we somehow made it possible that it worked for our receptive part, which is a multiple choice test. So next slide, please. I will briefly talk about the test before Wolfgang maybe shows a video later. So what you see is it's a comprehension part. It's a narrative in Swiss German Sign Language. It's about four minutes long, and then it's been repeated and split up in 3 parts again, and then you have 4 multiple choice questions. So what you see on the right hand side, you have on the left hand side, you have the question in sign language, and then you have 3 answer choices. So Wolfgang, can you maybe play the video? Yeah, I think that's Wolfgang, you might stop it. So I think it's very clear. It's a simple structure, as we know from any other kind of test. The difference only is that we used videos for obvious reasons. The next slide, please. So what did we actually change? So we had to make some changes to the question types that were available within Lime Survey. We had included settings how often students could watch the videos, and all students were registered within Lime survey and then received a personal code, so you have some kind of control that the students actually did the testing. Next slide. From a technical perspective, it worked quite well. I mean, there wasn't a huge, there weren't hundreds of people accessing the platform at the same time, so that was definitely an advantage, I guess. The only thing we discussed before and is so, well, yeah, we can't control really who's doing the test, right? I mean, it was kind of like it was self-administered, obviously. We kind of decided to do this way because there wasn't no other way. I mean, we were discussing that people need to set up, do screen sharing with team viewers, but I thought this is just too much of an effort that we can't really can't do because of resources. For from the system side, I think it worked quite well for simple multiple choice tests. The Lime server, I was quite surprised that it worked because it's definitely not a testing instrument. But I think it's very much restricted for multiple choice. That's not really, I don't think it can be used for any other kind of tests or item types. We haven't tried it out. So the experience was, to summarize, the experience was quite positive. It definitely has this disadvantage with, and I guess as many other universities or test providers were faced with the same situation, that we have to put things online, which has also its advantages and disadvantages. Okay, then I'll hand over to you, Wolfgang.
Okay, right. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about sign language assessments for children. As I said before, I'm going to focus on vocabulary. So for those of you who have no experience working with deaf children whatsoever, the next image is just to give you an idea what language assessment of this target group may look like or feels like often. To those of you who have experience, who can probably relate to that. So traditionally what happens is that practitioners working with deaf children usually draw on existing vocabulary tests for spoken languages. And some examples of those are, for instance, the Peabody picture vocabulary test or the receptive or productive one-word picture vocabulary test. There are a couple of benefits of those. First of all, they are available. As Tobias said, a lot of tests are still for sign language not commercially available. These are. They have been standardized on large samples, and they give a good idea of a child's person's vocabulary size. However, the downside is that they have been developed for normed on a different target group, which is hearing children. So as a result, and perhaps unsurprising, deaf children tend to perform quite poorly on those, and that is because for many
It seems that we may have lost connection.
Yes, it looks like it. We lost him. So can we wait a second that he comes
Certainly.
back? So. So as Wolfgang was saying, for testing for children is a totally different domain than testing adults, what I presented before. Is he
Here he's back.
Yes, he's back. Wolfgang? No?
Probably unstable connection.
Yeah, so I will proceed until he's totally back. Wolfgang?
Hi, I'm terribly sorry. I have no idea what happened. All of a sudden it was gone. My batteries are still full anyway. I'm
So
sharing.
just proceed, yeah.
Yeah, just proceed. Okay. So as I said, deaf children perform poorly on this test, standardized test, because English may not be the first language. There's a direct link to hearing minority groups for who English is also an additional language, and who also we know that they perform poorly on standardized tests. However, for deaf children, it's more complex because the majority of them grow up with hearing families. That means their language experience, there is great variation. Some of these children may not have any or very limited languages until they enter school. So as a consequence, many deaf children are misdiagnosed as having a language difficulty or even a language impairment, whereas in fact, it's more a language difference because of their unique experience. So our efforts to address some of the shortcomings and also to develop a test that is appropriate for signing deaf children led us to a model that had been introduced originally for hearing adult L2 learners. And that model proposes that we look at vocabulary knowledge not so much as an instantaneous process, either you know a word or you don't know, but that you think of it as a more gradual process with different layers of vocabulary knowledge. And the team around Bahia Laufer and colleagues from the University of Haifa in Israel, they highlight that the link between vocabulary knowledge and the relationship between word form and word meaning. And they proposed that this relationship can be expressed in different, let me see, I just cannot see it, different degrees of strength. So what we did is we adapted this model for sign language by measuring deaf children's strengths of vocabulary knowledge based on their understanding of different mappings between sign language form and sign language meaning. And this is what it looks like. This is a web-based British Sign Language vocabulary test, BSLVT. It has 4 tasks. 2 on the left-hand side are production task, and on the right-hand side, a comprehension task. Don't worry about the names. If they confuse you, we use the same language as the theoretical model. But for those of you familiar with test formats will undoubtedly recognize the form recall task, upper left corner, that it's a picture naming task, similar to the productive one-word picture vocabulary task. Or the lower right corner, the meaning recognition task, that's the same format used in the P-body, that you have a word, or in our case, a sign picture matching task. We added 2 more tasks. One is in the upper right corner, that is form recognition, picture sign matching task, and in the lower left corner, a meaning recall task, which is a meaning association task. The child is presented with the target sign and asked, can you think of a sign, another sign with a meaning with a related meaning? It's important to point out that all tasks use the same items. That's why you see the double-decker bus reappearing. We take full advantage of the online format by making the test computer adaptive. So that means we start with a difficult task, and then each item that is answered correctly is automatically removed from all tasks that follows, the easier tasks that follow. Thereby, the time to complete the task is faster, the better you perform. And that is equally appreciated by both the test administrator as well as the test taker. So there are a couple of the benefits of using this approach, same items across tasks, is twofold. From a theoretical point, it allows us to examine whether there are differences, that children have a differences and children understand a different performing on the different tasks, the different form meaning mapping task. And from a practitioner view, it provides them with a more detailed view of an individual student's strengths of vocabulary knowledge that can also then guide their decisions about future support. Just to look at the finding, I arranged the task based on children's strengths from the left to the right. So for the BSL task, you see, unsurprisingly, children do better on comprehension tasks than production. What's perhaps more interesting to point out is that we also found notable to significant differences between the comprehension task as well as between the production task. And that nicely links to the idea that vocabulary knowledge is in fact a gradual process rather than instantaneous. The test has now been adopted for other sign languages, among them American Sign Language and more recently Finnish Sign Language. And as you can see, the results are exactly the same. We see that same hierarchy of strengths of vocabulary knowledge. And that is exciting because it supports the model, and not only that, but it also shows that this model, which has been developed originally for spoken language, can also be applied for signed languages. Just on a final note, the test is currently being adopted for Hong Kong Sign Language. So we're waiting to see what the final test looks like, and then obviously want to compare the results from our colleagues in Hong Kong and see whether they also show the same hierarchy. Back to Tobias.
Yeah, just to wrap it up from, just to wrap it up from our side on the reflections, so we can basically observe an increased use of web-based and computer-based testing in the last 10 years. We could see what are the advantages and disadvantages. We can definitely see that for the future, we will have more use of sign language technologies. This is basically also comparable what we know from automatic speech recognition technology or automatic essay correction systems. And one thing that still needs to be addressed from my understanding to have or what I'm planning to do, to launch an open source project where it will be hopefully possible at some point to have a software or system in place that people could use to implement their own sign language tests, and not only for a specific test, which is nowadays quite common that people develop a system that's be used for one test or a number of tests, but not being used across different kinds of tests. Yes. Well, that's pretty much from my side. Wolfgang, you would like to add something, or are we?
Just said, because now we have the vocabulary test, and another test has now been adapted for several other sign languages. That opens the question whether it would be possible to have some kind of a shared platform for adapted sign languages, that in the future sign language test developers who maybe do not have access to the same resources, that they could draw that they could use templates that have the same format, and then they just have to populate it with upload their videos. And then there could also be the idea of a shared database similar to the Childis that is available for researchers and can then be populated with results from signed languages across the world, and hopefully then also from colleagues in Asia. That would be fantastic. That's from my end.
Okay, then we could move on to
questions.
Okay,
any?
Thank you very much.
And again, apologies for the cutout.
It's entirely fine, Doctor. I am waiting to read any questions here from the chat line. There's none so far, so I will ask one if you don't mind, and it's just a very ignorant question from the point of view of someone who's new to the sign language technology, ideas, and studies. The question is, does sign language still retain an advantage over written language in videos? For example, when something is like a politician talks on television and there is a sign language interpreter behind him. Why am I asking this? Because I think sometimes reading the words would be just as good if there's a speech to text conversion, something like this. So this is
I would maybe just add something. I think it's more an issue of the language competence. So as Wolfgang was saying, most of the deaf people, about 95% are born to hearing parents. So their first language is not sign language per se. They might have early access or not. So basically, in average, I think deaf people, depending on the country, have a very low literacy levels. Not all of them, but the average. So sign language interpreters is just guarantees access to information and to society compared to to written language. It really depends on the person, but talking to deaf people, a lot of people would say it's accessible now for me. And it's also the speed. I mean, if you hear someone, if you have live captioning, it's very fast. I mean, I think it's even for us might be difficult to follow, right? So, and sign language interpreters make it possible to access information. Yeah.
And if I could just add to that, it's also a cultural thing, because for those people for those people who are born deaf, for instance, generations of deaf, to them they embrace sign language as their language, as we would do with spoken language, and we might not go down well with us if somebody would mute the news and we are just relying on writing, as literate as we may be. So to them it's also just that they feel they have access, they deserve access to their language, because to signing deaf people, that's their first language.
So is the science that studies sign language called phonology?
Phonology is also used, yes, even though it originates from spoken language, but in order to make comparative studies, comparisons easier, the same terminology is used, yes.
Yes, I see.
Well, yeah, you could briefly say, you know, that sign languages today are, let's say, comparable systems as spoken languages in terms of research. So same structures, same disciplines, processing, acquisition. Yeah, so that's pretty much.
And it's universal, am I correct?
No. Definitely, you know, here in Switzerland, no, that's a very good question. No, it's definitely not. The sign languages are very different. Even here in Switzerland, we have 3 different sign languages because we have 3 different spoken languages or language regions, and also German, Swiss German sign language are different. British and American sign language are different. So
you have regional differences. You can also have slang. All that exists in sign language as well as in spoken languages.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of ground to cover for the future, for future research. That's why, for instance, just on a note from us, we know that in Asia, there are a lot of projects going on for sign language dictionaries. The Asian countries are on the forefront, are very active. So it would be really interesting for us, obviously, to either interest colleagues who work in Asia and working with deaf individuals, to get them interested in sign language assessment, developing tests, co-developing, or hearing about tests that may exist, but we don't know about it because maybe they have not been published about in English-speaking journals.
Let me ask you briefly, how would a dictionary ever be possible? Would it have to be a multimedia dictionary, I suppose, with a description of the motion?
Yes.
Yeah, with videos. I mean, Tobias,
With
do you want
videos.
to say something about that?
Yeah, basically it's these videos. We have one, for example, here in German Switzerland for all 3 Swiss, for all 3 sign languages. So it's basically it's videos, and you also have transcription systems that are used for research purposes comparable to the IPA. Yeah, so it's all So that's why video technology is so important even for assessment, right? So
I see. And by the same, sorry, please, Caroline Roger would like to ask a question.
Hey, I have a couple friends in Singapore who are working on a sign language dictionary, and they are deaf friends. So could you direct me to some resources about your work that I could share with them?
Sure. You know, I can type in actually there's a website if in case you're in the assessment side, and Wolfgang, you might even.
Yeah, I really don't know very much about this field either, but I just kind of wanted to help represent them here today and gather some info for them.
No, Tobias, you probably want to give your website. Yes, exactly. So
I just typed in website on assessment. And feel free to tell them they can contact us if they have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. We have come to a conclusion of this. I should very much like to thank the 2 academics that have joined us for this very interesting presentation. Dr. Mann and Dr. Haug, thank you very much. And thank you all for attending. And the next presentation will take place in 10 minutes, and it will be held by Rose Clisham and Catherine Hughes. It will be about detecting and responding to malpractice in automated scoring systems. It will start in about 10 minutes. So until then, we will have a small break, short break.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.